So welcome back to Bexhill West. Now it feels ages since my last video. There's lots of very good reasons for that, but don't worry, work has been continuing apace with my various efforts with my model. Anyway, today's video is all about the mechanical interlocking of my lever frame. Now if you've seen my last couple of videos, you'll know I've designed a lever frame for one of the signal boxes at Bexhill West, and I had been considering the mechanical interlocking of it. And certainly if you saw my video in which I showed an example of a lever frame with its mechanical interlocking, you'll have seen the sort of complexity involved with it and some of the things I need to be thinking about. Well, I designed the system as a paper exercise and I'd clearly made a couple of errors. I'd asked for some help on the Scalefour forum, and that lots was gratefully received, which was really helpful, and that's helped steer me in the right direction. But what I thought I'd do is make a little model, a sort of construction kit if you like, that would enable me to test out some of my ideas and kind of prototype the interlocking before I kind of make the final version. And so this video and what you've just been seeing is me assembling that system. So the locking tray is just laser cut MDF, and that all clips together as you've seen to make the tray. The locking bars themselves are again laser cut in acrylic, and the tappets are similar. Now I've designed the tappets with little breakout elements so the exact position and notches can be kind of picked at will. Although in the example you're looking at here, I went ahead and laser cut all the notches in the right place, but I've got some spares which, as you'll see, are going to be handy, of the original breakout type. So that's the basic setup. I've designed a number of locks or dogs which attach to the locking bars with some cut down rivets. Okay, so by way of a reminder of what I'm trying to achieve here I've got a diagram of the terminus at Bexhill West, and there are 3 platforms, and each platform has a crossover, and there are ground signals which control each crossover. So taking a look at the crossover at platform number 1 first of all, we can see we've got the crossover itself, which will be controlled by one lever, and there are 2 ground signals. Ground signal which will allow entry onto the crossover from the loop, and also one from the platform road. So clearly what we're trying to achieve here is going to need 3 levers, a lever to operate the crossover and a lever each for the 2 ground signals. Now in order to prevent a conflicting movement, that is, a train approaching that crossover from each direction and colliding in the middle, it's necessary that either one ground signal is set to clear or the other. Simple logic to it, it's an either or. So what we need to do is to achieve the mechanical mechanism that's going to allow that to happen. So what I'm going to do is show you my first attempt at it. Now this is wrong, and I'm grateful to all the people who pointed out that it's wrong, but I'll show you anyway because it might help others who are thinking about this sort of thing to kind of figure it out for themselves where they might be going wrong as well. So this is my first try, and just sort of so you know, that little lock that my fingers are holding, that is a lock for the points which are on lever number 1. Now in the real world they were released by box number 1, signal box number 1, the second signal box at Bexhill West. On my model I'm going to have those released by a servo, because to create a mechanical linkage back to box number 1 will be too cumbersome. So let's ignore that for the moment, and we'll just take you through the process. So I'm going to release that lock on number 1. Remember, this would be a servo. So that now allows me to change the points. So they've gone from their normal position, which was straight, to now curved. That releases lever number 2, so one ground signal will work, but the ground signal attached to number 3 is firmly locked, which is brilliant. If I reverse lever number 2, I can now change number 3. But there's a problem in that I can also move number 2, and that's because there's a little notch provided here which connects back to the locking on number 1 lever, and that's allowing that to slide across. So the whole thing is pretty pointless. We could chalk this one up as a fail. If we have a look at it again in close-up, you can see that notch and that dog, which is released by lever number 1. So we set the points that allows us to move number 3, and unfortunately that notch from that locking enables the little dog to be pushed over from lever 2, and that really is the crux of the problem with this setup as I have it here. So at this point I knew I was more or less on the right lines, but knew that I clearly didn't understand enough about the problem. So I posted what I was doing on the Scalefour Society's forum, and there had some really helpful advice, including this diagram, which was posted for my benefit, which shows exactly what the problem is that I was trying to solve and just how straightforward the solution is. Clearly I'd been overthinking it far too much. Anyway, following this advice, I've reconstructed my little kit of parts, and we'll have a look and see how the revised setup will work. So let's have a look at this Mark II version. In this case, we've got the crossover points are connected to lever number 2, the ground signal from the loop is lever 1, and the ground signal from platform 1 is lever 3. And we've got the mechanical release represented here. This will be servo controlled. So if the mechanical release is released, that allows the crossover, which is normally set to straight, to be reversed, which will set it to its branching configuration. And once that's been achieved, we can now move the signal, reverse lever number 1, which will set the signal from the loop to clear. And having done so, the signal on number 3 is locked. If we put number 1 back to danger, we can now set number 3 to clear. Oops, there we go. And now number 1 is locked. Again, we can set number 3 back to danger, and at that point we can set our points back straight ahead, and we can lock them. And in this position, the ground signal from the loop on lever 1 is locked, as is the signal on lever 3. But if you've made it to this part in the video, well done. Everything that's gone before may well have seemed a bit confusing, and it's certainly been confusing to me making the video. But having come up with that final locking solution for the crossover on platform 1, it's now a simple case just to duplicate that 2 more times for the remaining 2 crossovers. And I should put on screen now the final, hopefully, the final configuration of the whole thing. Now, I'm immensely grateful to a couple of gentlemen, in particular Keith and Howard of the Scalefour forum, who really pointed me in the right direction. I was really getting confused with what I was trying to do, and they sorted me out, so thank you very much to those gentlemen. Has it been a waste of my effort making this little locking table kit thing up when the solution is actually quite simple and was effectively given to me anyway by Howard? Well, maybe. I think not, because eventually I'm going to need to come up with the locking table for signal box number 1, which I shall put on the screen now. Here's the diagram for it, and there's so much going on there. I'm going to get in a right pickle, so I'll be able to use this system that I've come up with to hopefully make a bit more sense of sorting all of that out. Okay, with that said, that's all I'm going to be saying on the subject of signal interlocking for the time being. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I'm really no expert at it at all. I've just been kind of finding my way through it. In fact, I didn't intend to get involved in any of this in the first place. I simply built a lever frame because I wanted a means to control the track that I was laying, but in doing so that got me thinking about the interlocking and what have you. Now I've figured out what the final design is going to be, it should be no trouble at all to actually get the kit from the Scalefour Society, which coincidentally was designed by Howard, and that's designed to fit onto the lever frame I've already built. So perhaps we'll revisit that at a future time, but I think in the meantime we need to get on with building Bexhill West itself. So having said that there is nothing more to say on the subject, I've just remembered there actually is. Now, an experienced signalman or signal operator will be able to look at the signal box diagram and also the position of the levers and know exactly what's going on. Now, if you remember my last video, for example, I'd mentioned that it was apparently southern practice that the locking lever would, when it's locked, be in the reversed position, so would be kind of sticking forwards towards the signaller. Now, with my kind of reworked version of my lever frame and how that's all going to work, because I've made the locking for the crossovers, and if you remember that's mechanically linked to box number 1, because I've made that effectively electronic, there is no visual indicator in the signal box that that crossover is indeed locked, and I need to do something about that. I'm very mindful of it. So what I've done is I've come up with a little instrument that's going to sit on the block shelf. There'll be one for each crossover, and it simply shows whether or not it's locked or unlocked. And apparently this is a reasonably common sort of retrofit as boxes have been upgraded. So in doing so, it's not really wrong. It isn't completely accurate to what was at Bexhill West, but it's still apparently sound signalling practice. So that's the little device. There'll be 3 of those on the block shelf just above the levers, and you'll be able to look at the frame and look at those gauges and see exactly what the state of play is. Now then, before I wrap this up, I've got 2 or 3 announcements to make. The first of which seems quite fitting, as I've mentioned the Scalefour Society a couple of times in this video, and that is on the weekend of the 24th and 25th of September, the Scalefour Society are holding their Scaleforum exhibition, and they've invited me along as a demonstrator at that event. Now, they've not got me for any particular expertise that I've got, quite the opposite. I'll be there demonstrating under the title Starting in P4. So if you're interested in fine scale modelling, P4, EM even, and you'd like to know a little bit more, and you'd like to have a chat with somebody who's just starting themselves and who is definitely not an expert, therefore non-threatening, if you're like me, you're a newcomer, then do please come along. It'd be nice to see you there. I will have, as part of my display, many of the things that you will have seen in my videos, and I'm happy to chat with anybody about anything that they might have a question about. I almost certainly won't have any of the answers, but I might be able to point you in the direction of somebody who does. So just a reminder, that's the weekend of September the 24th and 25th this year, Scaleforum. Hope to see some of you there. So then finally, to wrap this all up, just a couple of announcements. You may recall these are my little point motors. These have been selling like hotcakes. People have been very pleased with them. So just to let you know, there's still a good stock of these available, and you can find those in my little online shop. I'll leave a link in the description. I might even put it on the screen here. Now, with that in mind, one other thing, the ballast vacuums have continued to be doing very well. People are very pleased with them. So there is now an O-gauge version. Now, I don't have a bit of O-gauge track here to test this out, but several people have got these now and have commented to me that they work a treat. And I asked one of the gentlemen who had one, do I dare put that in the shop? And he said definitely, it's really good. So there you go, that's the O-gauge ballast vacuum. Now finally, just to wrap up, and excuse all the housekeeping here, but I want to try and get people up to date. It's always been my intention to try and make really regular videos, but the last couple of months I've just not had the chance. I've been completing some home renovations here and it's just taken up all my time. However, they're now all done, And you may recall me mentioning months and months ago that I was hoping to go part-time. Well, that has now happened. I am now officially part-time, so that's going to give me more time to crack on with the model and hopefully make videos much more regularly. So my intention is to try and get to a sort of a one a week sequence. I was managing it before in lockdown and it sort of slipped, so I hope to pick up the pace and get things moving. Anyway, thank you all very much indeed for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheerio.